Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the CouchScouts Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Jackson. With me, as always, I've got my fellow co-host with me, Matt Cooper
What's up?
and Matt Rupert. How are you fellas doing today?
Doing great. Ready to get into these prospects.
Dude,
Yeah, man. We always sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. You asked how I'm doing, so I'm gonna tell you how I'm doing, man. Uh if you wonder why sometimes we start at 8 instead of 7:30, I have a men's dinner at my church. That's the first Tuesday of every month. And so that was tonight. It was delicious. They always feed us really good. And then I come onto the podcast with like heartburn and a food coma and the whole thing. So I'm ready to rock, man.
So what'd you eat? Now you got me curious.
It was fried chicken with cornbread and some of the best mac and cheese I've ever had. And then they had like brownies and ice cream for dessert and sweet tea. It was so good.
All right, so we're going to trace this rabbit hole for a second. Cornbread with corn or without corn? What's the take there?
There was no corn in the cornbread. But hey,
corn.
Shout out Life Point Church, Seneca, South Carolina. So yeah, man, they treat you right at those men's dinners. Wes says, "What's up, guys? What's up, Wes?"
What's up, Wes? Well, let's figure we've held it up long enough. Might as well dive into some prospects because, guys, we've got at least one fun one that I'm excited about, but not to bury the lead or anything like that. But I'm excited to get in and talk to these guys, some guys that a lot of the community I feel like is really rather high on. And then, of course, that's who we're talking about tonight is Western Kentucky's Malachi Corley and Central Florida's Javon Baker. If you guys are wondering where we're getting this film that we're breaking down, make sure that you sign up for the Dynasty Nerds Film Room or Nerd Herd. You get access to all the film that we watched, the all 22. Use promo code COOP for 15% off. It's where we can watch this film, and you guys can make some of your analysis yourself. But we'd be very excited to have you guys join us along in that process. If you guys aren't in the Discord, make sure you guys get in on our Discord. The link will be plugged in our show sheet as well. And before I go any further, I want to make sure that we do plug our rookie guide that is coming up here really soon at the end of the month before the NFL draft, and it is coming along, and I'm excited to get that to you guys. So you make sure you guys stay tuned for that.
Absolutely, man. We're going trait by trait. All of these guys, I mean, just in a one-page, very digestible format. It's not going to be like 5 pages per prospect or whatever. Like each prospect is going to have their page where we're going to go, like a little short paragraph on each trait, strengths and weaknesses, our overall outlook, where we would draft them, what's our ranking, what's our film grade. So definitely join the free Discord and keep listening. We'll get you more information about the rookie guide, but we definitely are excited to get that in y'all's hands. We've been working hard on it. It's our first one, and I think it's really going to help people dominate their rookie drafts.
And Brian for sure enjoys the Discord. He's saying you guys need to get in on that if you're not in on it as well. But let's go ahead and dive into these guys. And the first one that we're going to talk about is Malachi Corley from Western Kentucky. He's a 6'1", 197-pound senior. He was a former two-star prospect. Guys, get this. I looked it up today. Formerly recruited as a cornerback before switching over to wide receiver, which I thought was actually fairly interesting.
Yeah.
His best season was his junior season when he put up 1,293 yards with 11 touchdowns. Took a dip in production this year, 984 yards, still same amount of touchdowns with 11. But the first thing that we're going to talk about tonight, of course, is always the route running. What do they look like with their release, their stem of the route? How do they run routes? And I'm going to start with you, Cooper. What did you see when it came to Malachi Corley's route running?
I did not know that he was converted from playing quarterback. And
isn't that interesting?
Well, it makes a lot more sense why he doesn't know how to play wide receiver. So maybe he'll get there eventually. He's pretty new to it. But no, man, I did not like his route running. I'm just going to call a spade a spade. I was watching it. The first game I watched was against Ohio State. And obviously he played at Western Kentucky, so this was the closest thing to like NFL competition that we had, and so I wanted to start there. And to be fair, the game was 63-10, and so the team as a whole was overwhelmed. But those are the kind of DBs that you're going to have to be able to beat at the NFL level, and he just couldn't. Everything was, it was like negative average depth of target. He's catching it at or behind the line of scrimmage, taking these screens and these reverses, and they're finding like gadgety ways to get the ball in his hands because he wasn't separating short, intermediate, deep, anywhere. I don't know in 4 games watching him if I saw any examples of him beating man coverage and getting open and earning a target down the field. I didn't see it at all. So this was pretty disappointing for me. I didn't know what to expect. I knew everybody was excited about his yak, yards after catch, and we'll get to that. But that, to me, like, yak is like the third most important trait after like route running and ball skills. So you've got to have something else that you're bringing to the table.
You
And
got to be able to get open first. And just to kind of speak what you're talking about, I mean, he just wasn't all that often. And I did notice whenever he got a free release and he was able to actually run his routes were super rounded. I mean, just didn't really look crisp at all that often. I'm with you. I didn't really care for his route running or his release. I just don't think that was a strong suit for him. And honestly, at the wide receiver position, I mean, that's what we have weighted the heaviest in our grade book, and he just didn't do it well, and that really hurt him. I feel like it is going to hurt him at the next level. But Rupert, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
I saw the exact same thing, and to what Cooper said, he just really didn't separate it all man to man. I think I saw 3 or 4 times where he did, and it was just because it was a crossing route, and he got free release and was faster than the other guy. And a lot of his other catches down the field were more or less blown coverages in my mind. I didn't think that the corners were able to kind of trade off, the players like on deep crosses and whatnot. So, yeah, it seems like he was not able to separate down the field. So let's, give him a swing pass. Let's give him a screen. It really was pretty disheartening to see. I was expecting to like him a lot more, and I was just like, this guy's just not going to get open in the NFL. Reminded me of Laviska Shenault, who's another guy where he's really good with yak, but he can't separate it all. So it's just swing passes, jet sweeps, and that's basically the extent of his involvement in the offense.
For sure. And just kind of moving on. I mean, let's get to an area where he might have been a little better, but I'm excited to kind of chop this up with you, Cooper, because me and your grades on his ball skills were a little different. So I'm excited to kind of debate this a little bit with you. So I'll start with you first. When it came to his body control, hands, physicality, let's get into that. What did you think about his ball skills? Because when I watched it, at least for me, from my point, I noticed 5, 6, maybe even 7 just easy drops. I felt like while his catch radius was okay, I felt like he extended well to the ball. He went down and grabbed the ball well, and he kind of high pointed the ball on several occasions. Man, he was not a contested catch guy at all. This was not a strong suit for him, and I saw him drop way more balls than I would have felt comfortable with. But what about you?
Yeah, we watched the same games. I didn't see 5 or 6 drops, so I don't know what I missed there. I thought his hands looked fine. Like when the ball was put on him, I thought he looked pretty reliable catching it. So I gave him
I might be over exaggerating a little bit with 5 or 6, but I mean he at least had 3 or 4 where he would drop a pretty easy pass that I at least noted.
I think I remember 3 drops.
Did you see that? 3?
Yeah.
In 4 games. So that's not great. I mean, I didn't feel like I saw that. I gave him just a pretty average score for hands. I did not give him a good score for contested catch. I thought every time he was in a contested catch situation, he didn't win it. I thought his ball tracking was pretty rough. Like he just lost track of where it was, and when he would go to high point it, he wasn't where he needed to be. And he's not overly big either in terms of his. I mean, I think he's 5'11", so he's stocky, which we'll talk about, but in terms of like length, catch radius, long arms, like, so yeah, I don't know. I thought he was adjusting well to, like back shoulder type of stuff a little bit, but then like from a physicality standpoint, guys would kind of go through him at the catch point instead of him boxing out and shielding with his body. So I thought he was just pretty average in terms of ball skills. It's not a way that he's necessarily going to win, but it's not necessarily a weakness either from what I observed. And maybe I missed some stuff because clearly if y'all saw 3 or 4 drops, I did not see that, or I would have given him a lower score for hands. But
Yeah, see, I think I gave him a 6 for hands, and with those drops, I mean, I honestly probably could have gone lower. I mean, I didn't feel comfortable giving him any higher than that just because of those reasons.
Yeah, I gave him NFL average for hands. The drops that I remember was a screen pass where it was just went right through his hands. He was just looking upfield already. Another one, his running like a slant.
Yeah,
And
the
it was a pretty terrible pass. It was low. He had to go down and get it, but he didn't come up with it. And echoing you guys, that contested catch is just not his thing. And it makes sense that he's a converted wide receiver, especially with his ball tracking. He looked so out of his depth when he was trying to ball track down the field. And he just didn't time jumps right. You know, he'd jump a little early or just not figure out how to box out the defender. So really an area he struggled, and I just don't see him succeeding at that in the NFL level.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about the area that he does really excel in. That's his yards after the catch. I believe, Cooper, you gave him a 9, which is what was that, elite for our grading. So
10 is elite, 9 is incredible.
9's incredible. Yeah. So, and I think I gave him an 8, which I honestly felt like I could have gone even higher on that as well. But I mean, this is something he has in spades. I mean, I felt like I saw so many times him catching the ball, turning upfield with it. He would make a few guys miss, and I remember some long touchdown grabs just because of his speed, because of his yards after the catch ability. So I thought this was his best trait. But what did you guys think when it came to his yards after the catch? I'll start with you, Cooper.
Yeah, I mean, he was elite, a borderline elite. I mean, the only reason I didn't give him a 10, I'll say this, from a speed, acceleration, quickness, like we're going to talk about athleticism in a minute, but it's not elite. And so I think in some ways you almost have to be an elite athlete to be elite after the catch. So the fact that he was mostly trucking through people and breaking tackles rather than making guys miss or, outrunning people, just that is why it was a 9 instead of a 10, because it was, again, he's playing this lower level of competition. And I have to at least question a little bit, like, how much is that bully ball type of stuff going to work when even against D1 college competition, much less NFL competition. That's the only reason I gave it a 9, because he looked like close to the best yak guy we've studied so far.
Well, he's a really fun watch in that department.
I mean, every time he would grab a ball, like I said, this gadgety stuff like reverse, screen, swing pass. Like, I mean, there was one play where he stiff armed a guy into the grave and then housed it.
Over top of him after.
It was at the line of scrimmage, and he just took it for a touchdown just off of pure yak ability. So this was his best trait for me, and physicality was really high too. So I think I gave him an 8.5 for physicality and a 9 for yak, and they kind of went hand in hand because his yak is not like. So I'll say this: another guy that I have at a 9 for yak is Xavier Worthy, and it's completely different. Like, Xavier Worthy is 100% like, I'm going to outrun you, I'm going to defeat the angle, I might make you miss, but he's not really running you over. Whereas Corley just straight up, I'm going to run you over. Like,
Corley's yards after the catch was built off of his physicality.
He made everybody that tried to tackle him pay for it. He dropped that shoulder, and he's strong, and he's 215 pounds. So he's 5'11", 215. The reason that he gets these Deebo Samuel comps is not just because Deebo's a great yak guy and so is Malachi Corley. It's because Deebo's 6 foot 215, so the measurables are almost identical. And Deebo does a little bit of that bully ball type stuff too. Like, I know this is not like Rondale Moore that we're talking about. Like, Rondale Moore, the only thing he had in his game was yak, but he's 5'7", 181, whereas Corley is 5'11", 215. So I think that really works in his favor at the next level. That, if that's going to be your main calling card, like you better be not this tiny little guy, and he's not. So to that standpoint, like the physicality and the yak go hand in hand. I really loved it. It's super fun to watch, like super fun to watch him with the ball in his hands. I just don't know how he's going to get the ball in his hands at the next level because he just doesn't like at Western Kentucky. You're the best playmaker on their team. So they're just going to do all this gadgety stuff and force feed and find ways to get the ball in your hands. And you're going to get all these manufactured touches. At the NFL level, you might be your team's wide receiver 3. You're not going to get enough of those manufactured touches to be fantasy relevant. So if you want to be fantasy relevant, you got to be able to win some routes. And as of right now, I just don't think he can. So Brian, just real quick, he said, curious how you see him versus other guys that he has ranked in the same area, like Malik Washington and Xavier Legette, if you have time. I'll just real quick on that. I haven't graded Malik Washington yet, but Xavier Legette, I have just barely lower than Malachi Corley. They're like within a point of each other. So Legette is at 63.25 and Corley is at 63.85. And I think if I was on the clock in a draft, even though I've got Legette just slightly lower, I think the upside is so much greater that I would just go ahead and take Legette in a rookie draft.
Yeah.
I would take Legette over him by a mile.
I agree with that. Yeah, I think a lot of this, like what we're talking about, just his ability to not get open, comes down to some of his athleticism, right? He's not very twitchy. He's not very snappy on his routes. I'll go to you, Rupert. What did you see when it came to his athleticism? Because he's got the speed, right? Size is a little underwhelming, but he plays strong through his size. What did you notice about just his overall athleticism?
I think he has solid game speed. He doesn't get caught from behind too often. I do think he is a little stiff-hipped, and that might be because he is so stocky. I think that really limited him on lateral agility and things like that, and being able to run snappier routes and be able to really sink his hips and turn around on a dime. But other than that, I thought he had solid athleticism. His burst was pretty good, especially after trucking a dude. He could burst out of there pretty quick and make sure the next guy doesn't catch him from behind. So overall, I thought his athleticism was solid.
So overall at the combine, just so we have the numbers, he had a 68 athleticism score, which put him at 31st at the wide receiver position. Cooper, does that feel about right for you when it comes to his athleticism?
Yeah, I mean, y'all said he's got good speed. He's got my lowest speed score in the class. Now, not by much, but now, and I have not, I'm just saying I have not graded even close to all these wide receivers. So I'm just from the guys that I have graded so far, and it's about 8 of them. He's got the lowest speed score. So he's not as fast as Jalen McMillan. He's not as fast as Xavier Legette, Ricky Pearsall, Adonai Mitchell, Roman Wilson. So like of the guys that I've graded, even playing against that small school competition, it's not like he was burning them. So I've got him at a 6.5 for speed, a 6.5 for burst, and a 6 for quickness. So I didn't. That was one of the areas where, like, Debo, if that's gonna be your comp, first of all, Debo's a better route runner, and second of all, he's got like an 80th percentile burst score. So his start, stop, acceleration in short areas is way, way better to me than Malachi Corley, and so that's a limiting factor if your main attribute is going to be yak. I just don't think he's that athletic when he gets to the NFL level.
So right now, just looking at it, Malachi Corley has got an overall score from us of 62.59. That would put him right in the tier of average backup. I don't know about you guys, but when I was watching him, there's other guys that are in his same tier. They're going to go at the same time as him that I would just feel more comfortable drafting. Like, I don't know if this is a guy that I'm going to have anywhere on my roster personally, but do you guys want to speak to that a little bit?
Same. I said earlier, I see him as Laviska Shenault. Like, he may have a couple of games here and there, but he's barely going to be worth rostering, in my opinion. He's just, only thing he can really do is yak. He's not going to get open. He's not going to separate. So I just think he's going to get a couple of manufactured touches, and, he may have a few splash games, but I just don't see him as a long-term fantasy asset.
Yeah, I mean, I could at least see a path for him. He's so scheme dependent, right? So like Debo is really lucky that he landed with a Kyle Shanahan that knows how to use him and is getting him in all these situations where he's not being asked to run a ton of traditional wide receiver routes. Like, I mean, a few slants and curls and things, but nothing deep down the field. So he plays to that strength. And I think if Corley kind of fell into that type of situation, but I just don't even know that I don't know that he would get a starting job for an NFL team. One thing that encouraged me, I think he was really, really good run blocking. And I think with these new kick return rules, like he could be an absolute menace returning kicks with these new NFL rules and his yak ability. So I think he could find a spot and a role on an NFL team. I'm just not sure that unless he improves significantly, particularly in the route running department, I just don't know that he's ever going to earn enough of a real wide receiver role to be fantasy relevant. So if he was there in like the 4th round, he's not off my board. The issue is just the hype. Like I as much as I've heard about him on Twitter or whatever over the last few months, I was just really disappointed because I was expecting to like him a lot more than I did. And so his ADP is probably going to be at a point where I don't end up drafting him. But he's not off my board. It's just he would have to fall far enough, and I don't think he's going to fall far enough.
Yeah. Well, I think that's enough poo-pooing on Malachi Corley for tonight. Let's talk about a guy that I was I maybe wasn't as excited to go into the film with, but I mean, I came out of this film just gushing about this player. And I'm excited to talk about him. That is, of course, Central Florida's Javon Baker. He is 6'1", 202 pounds. He's a senior. He was a former 4-star prospect, a number 57 wide receiver in his class. He started with Alabama for 2 years, didn't really get much playing time before transferring to Central Florida. And I just want to start off by saying, while we can look at it, well, his biggest thing is going to be like, well, he didn't play for Alabama. He had to transfer somewhere to get playing time. I don't know, man, because when you turn on the film, this guy has a lot to like about him. So I don't want that to sour anybody's taste, because there's a lot to like about Javon Baker. And the first thing we're going to talk about is, of course, his route running. And for this, I saw several instances of him being really, really snappy at the point of his route, at the stem of his route. I really, really enjoyed the stem of his route stuff. Something that I came away a little underimpressed in, I guess, was his release. It felt like, and we talked about this in the Discord as well, Cooper, it felt like a lot of times he would do a stutter step to the inside or outside, not really sell it as much as he wanted to, and the defender would stay on his hip. But at the same time, he showed massive areas of improving in this, because he did show the ability to be able to release at certain instances. So they kind of felt like a mixed bag with this, but I really actually enjoyed his route running. I thought this was a plus for him. But I'm going to start with you, Rupert. What did you think about his route running skills?
Same. I was really pleasantly surprised. Like you said, his release isn't perfect, but I thought it was above average. There's a lot of instances where he would, run a really good release, be press, and, be off down the field. It was just not as consistent as he was at the stem of his route. I thought he was really good at the stem of his route.
He's really good at the stem of his route.
Yeah. And he shows a lot of nuance. Like, he kind of plays around with the defender, trying to manipulate them if they're, playing off coverage. And it was really fun to watch. I really liked his game.
Yeah, I thought he was twitchy, did a really good job, like you guys said, at the stem, like plant that foot in the ground, nod your head one way, break the other, just really sudden in and out of his breaks, and created a lot of separation there. Like you said, Jackson, I think with the release, he had moments. It was like he can be coached on that. He can get better. Like he's got the power in his legs. He's got good footwork. It seemed more like, with that jab step that you mentioned, that this was kind of his go-to move. He'd jab one way and then go the other, but he didn't sell it enough. He didn't nod the head and the hips. And it was like very telegraphed, like, okay, it's pretty obvious that you're trying to fake inside and then go outside. So I'm just going to stay on the outside. I'm not going to fall for it. And so that was the thing where it felt like he wasn't creating a lot of separation. He certainly had the speed that if he did win on the release and got a couple steps, nobody was catching him. He had the physicality that if he needed to do some hand fighting at the release, he could swat your hands. And so he's got all the tools, I think, to get better in that area. And there were just flashes of it here and there where it's like, okay, that's what I wanted to see. But he did go to the same move a lot. And so he needs to vary his release package. And so I gave him a 7 for release, which is still a pretty solid score. And I gave him a 7.5 for route running. So he's not like a technician. He's not like the best route runner that I've studied in the class at all, but it's not a weakness either. And there's room to improve. And so I saw a good bit of separation that he created.
Yeah, you said something that I kind of want to say on the podcast because I thought it was so great. You compared him to Ricky Pearsall and the fact where Ricky Pearsall, he is what he is, right? We know what he is. There's not really much improvement in that area. There's a lot of area for improvement for Javon Baker where he can be coached and he can get even better at his route running.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's younger. He's more explosive. He's twitchier. So, yeah, bigger. I'm totally with you on that. Like, Javon Baker, probably more than a lot of other guys I've studied in this class, definitely has room to get better than what his tape score would indicate. And he's got a good tape score. So I don't want to undersell that either. I mean, we'll kind of get to it in the wrap up, but
yeah,
he's got a good tape.
Let's talk about something I felt like he just excelled in. Like it was so fun to watch was his ball skills. I mean, he's got, I would argue, the best body control in this class. The way he bends and makes literally NFL level catches on the sideline. I mean, is so impressive. He's got sticky hands. He high points the ball super well. I mean, really, really great in the contested catch ability. I mean, this was by far his best trait, and we like a lot of his traits, but this was by far his best. I mean, it was so fun to watch him in these type of go up and get it situations. But I'm going to start with you, Cooper. What did you think when it came to his hands and ball skills?
I'm going to check you on one thing. You said best in the class. It's been a long time since we did Marvin Harrison Jr. on this podcast. I think that was back in November. It was like the first one that we did when we started breaking.
One of the best.
I'm going to check you because Marvin Harrison Jr., like, I can almost guarantee you he's going to get a 10 on body control for my film score. I gave Javon Baker a 9. So, like, I loved it. He made, and this was, I believe Steve Smith said this, and then Mike from the Discord said this when we were live watching him in there. He said he makes the easy stuff look hard and the hard stuff look easy. And I think that summed it up pretty well. Like, there were some concentration drops, but the hard catches he made look easy. Like, just whether it was down low and he had to kind of dive down by his ankles to get it, or whether it was up high and he had to go high point the thing. He had a humongous catch radius. If it was behind him and he had to contort his body in a funny way to go back and get it, he caught everything with his hands. There was no body catching at all. He was so strong and physical at the catch point. Like, he had that little get off me to create separation at the catch point. Great at back shoulder stuff. So really, really high level ball skills. And he had a little bit of dog in him. Like, he just had that, this is my ball. Yeah. You back off. I'm going to go up and take it from you kind of mentality that I just love to see. So for me, he got a 9 at contested catch, an 8 for catch radius, a 9 for body control. So really, really
something good. That you really liked that you made the point of mentioning his late hands that he showed sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, the ball would go up, and if you don't know what I mean by late hands, it's like he wouldn't throw up his hands so early that the DB who has his back turned knows that the ball's coming. Like, he would wait and wait and wait, and the ball would be almost there, and then at the last second, he'd stick his hands up and he'd catch it, and the DB would, be like a really tight window throw where if the DB had known that the ball was coming, he could have probably put his hands up and deflected the pass, but he doesn't know it's coming because he's got his back turned, and Javon Baker's not tipping him off with it. So that is a high-level skill that I enjoyed seeing from Javon Baker. I gave him a 7.5 for hands, and it's just because of some of those concentration drops. But like I said, the hard stuff, he made it look easy, and it was really fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, he definitely has that my ball mentality. Like you all said, like, he high points the ball perfect. Back shoulder throws, like if he gets paired with a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, let's say,
yeah,
who's kind of a back shoulder master, like,
Mhm.
look out, this dude's going to go for, 1,300 yards or something. But it was special to me. It was really, really intriguing. Like you said, not the best in the class, but definitely,
Well
I'd say
above
up
average.
there with Anani Mitchell. And
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of anyone else.
he's
I
up there,
think
man.
that'd be it.
He's good at it. One thing that I really enjoyed too, we kind of mentioned this already, his speed, right? His yards after the catch ability, especially his acceleration, man. Does he not just eat up cushions in a hurry? I mean, this guy has got
Mhm.
speed to beat you over the top. And I felt like I didn't see, maybe I just missed it. I didn't see like a ton of Yak, but I saw his ability to do this. So I'll start with you, Rupert. What did you see? And this, especially his acceleration, elusiveness, that sort of thing.
Agreed. I think it was more of his usage where
Yeah.
he's getting targets down the field and, tight window contested catch situations a lot of times. So I think the scheme really didn't benefit him for Yak, but everything I saw, he has that in his pocket. It just kind of wasn't exemplified that way with the scheme there. I thought he's really quick for his size. He looks bigger than he weighed in and at
Yeah,
the
6'1",
combine, but
202.
he looks a lot
Well,
bigger on film. I guess that's just product of playing at Central Florida, but he's got some nice wiggle too. And like we alluded to earlier, he's got that dog in him. He's gonna, try and bury the guy in front of him, which I really like to see.
What about
Yeah,
you,
for
Rupert?
Yak, I just gave him just kind of it's a slightly above average. He didn't blow me away with this. And again, like you said, Rupert, there was as opposed to Corley, who like they were designing plays for him to get the ball in his hands and do Yak stuff like multiple times a game. I don't know that I saw that at all with Javon Baker, and we watched quite a few games. Like I just they did not give him any layups. They didn't give him screens or reverses or swing passes. Even didn't do that many short slants. So, not a lot of like routes that would accentuate that ability. And there were definitely some instances of making people miss and looking pretty twitchy after the catch, but it was kind of few and far between. And so it was enough there that I'm like, okay, he can do it. It's not a weakness, but it just also didn't blow me away. So
Well,
I think I
I
gave
think
him
it's
a 7
crazy.
for Yak.
I think it's crazy they didn't design more for him because his athleticism is through the charts. I felt like
Mhm.
I really enjoyed his athleticism.
Yeah, I gave him an
Agreed.
8 for speed and an 8.5 for burst.
Yeah,
So I mean, yeah, very solid athlete, and especially for his size. I mean, he's not huge, but he's not tiny either. He's kind of built a little bit like Malik Neighbors, more in that 6', 6'1" range, but a little bit stocky, and so he's not thin, and but so he's got enough meat on his bones to like break some tackles and deal with the physicality of the game, but he's still like real fast and bursty. So overall, definitely a plus athlete, I think.
something I did notice at least a few times, and we noted this when we were watching the film, Cooper. Um, Physicality when it comes to that athleticism that we were just talking about, he's got it, and I felt like the more games we watched, the better he got at it. But we did note several instances of him getting pushed out of bounds, kind of not enjoying getting physical with it with the DB, and to the point where he was running his mouth at a few DBs because he doesn't like when DBs put his hands on him. It felt like so that is something I at least want to throw out there because it's something that we at least noted.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't like a ton, but definitely a few instances where it just seemed like it bothered him. It was in his head. He was jawing back and forth with the DB multiple plays in a row and jawing at the ref and throwing his hands up. And, but he's built well enough. Like he's not weak or soft or any of that type of stuff. Like he can handle
Yeah,
hand checking. He can win hand fighting. So I think I gave him a 6 or 7 physicality. I gave him a 7. So, um, yeah, not a huge weakness, but
yeah.
there were a few plays like that for sure.
Well, let's talk about something we don't really grade in our scale, but is something that he really did well. His intangibles, and I specifically want y'all to speak to his ability or knowledge to keep extending plays, running with his quarterback, never letting a play die, and then his just effort level. I felt like was really really good. And while we don't grade that, I mean that's something that NFL coaches are going to love about Javon Baker.
Yeah, I think this really contributes to like how I see him having so much upside. I don't really see much weakness in his game, and he seems like a high character, high football IQ player. Like you said, his quarterback was running for his life quite a bit, so he ended up having to play scramble drill a bit, and he was always working back towards his quarterback, not giving up on the play, and run blocking. He had that dog in him again, and he was willing to get in there every single play. I don't think I saw him take one play off, which was pretty shocking for a wide receiver, especially after watching some other guys in this class. But yeah, really loved his intangibles.
Yeah, I mean, he did a great job extending the play. That was, I mean, we must have noted that like 6, 7, 8 times a game. It was like, wow, like the play is over. The quarterback, like his route that he was asked to run has been run. And now the quarterback is scrambling, and he always moved with him. He always gave him a target. He had really good instincts too. Like he would move to the right place. He was creating options for his quarterback in bad situations and creating big plays off of it. So that's encouraging to see. And then I think he's got like just the right amount of cockiness to him. Like some of the best wide receivers in NFL history, and it can go too far sometimes, but some of the best wide receivers, they're just like, I'm better than you, and I've got the confidence that I'm going to beat you every time, and I know it. And I felt like Baker kind of had that. Like he had this edge to him that some people would probably think it was obnoxious. I even saw one play where he like won the route but didn't get targeted, and he like pointed in the DB's face, like, I got you. And I laughed out loud. I mean, it was funny, but yeah,
I rewinded that play and watched it 3 times over, and then filmed it on my phone so I can make sure to tweet that. I love that play so much because one, it was a filthy move that he put on the DB, and then just
clowned him a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think he might have a little bit of that diva wide receiver in him, but also like I like that he has that confidence that like
I wouldn't say diva because the diva wide receivers take plays off and complain a lot. I didn't see that.
Yeah. I mean, more when I said the diva, I mean like he's probably going to get fined for some touchdown celebrations and things like that. But and I could see him being the type to be like, hey, I'm not getting enough targets, that type of thing. But I don't know. I mean, I don't want to speak on a guy without knowing the person, but he seems to have that confident air, and I like it. Like I'm trying to speak complimentary of him. Like I think you have to have some extent. Like if you're going to be a star receiver in the NFL, and I think he has that potential to be a star receiver in the NFL, you got to believe that you are one, and I think he does.
So going back, as we wrap up, I mean, he got a film grade of us for 75.91, and that puts him, even with me wanting to rate him as a flex option, you guys were high enough on him that he graded out as a fantasy starter. And do we feel comfortable with that? I mean, where do we see him going in the NFL draft? I mean, where are you taking him in your rookie drafts?
In the NFL draft, I'd be stunned if he makes it out of the second. I feel like he's for sure a second round pick, potentially a first round pick if the team falls in love with him, has great meetings, whatnot. And as far as rookie drafts, I'd take him in the end of the first round and all day in the second round.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm high enough where I would take him in the first round, just because it is such a loaded class, and there are so many guys that could go in the first round that I probably would have ranked higher. But yeah,
even
like
if he gets higher
early to mid second round. And I think, from what I've seen in like rookie mock drafts, I'm probably going to get a ton of shares of him in the early to mid second round, because often I'll even see him fall to the third round sometimes. So unless his ADP really rises after the NFL draft, the range that I see him going in now, I'm going to be drafting a ton of shares of him because I do have him graded.
He might be my most owned player right now when I do rookie drafts because of where you can get him versus where I think he's worth it.
Yeah, I mean, he's a beast. I love the film. The production's actually pretty good too. It was at UCF, which is still it's not as low as like a Western Kentucky. It's more, it's closer to NFL competition, at least a little bit. And even the Bama thing, like that doesn't, his freshman year, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle were both there. Like I know Alabama kind of now years later, like their receiver room is not what it used to be.
Yeah.
But when he was there as a freshman, as this highly recruited freshman waiting his turn, they were like wide receiver U at that point. Every year they were cranking out NFL first round draft picks. And so the fact that he had to transfer out of Alabama doesn't bother me at all. And then he dominated at UCF. The tape is fantastic. He's a great athlete. So there's a lot that I really like about Javon Baker. So, I'll draft him in the second round all day long.
So draft him is what we're telling you because he's great. Well, that about does us for tonight, guys. I had a fun time talking about these guys with y'all. Of course, we'll be back continuing this series. I believe we've got, was it one more week of this series, Cooper?
One more week, and then it'll be draft week, and we'll be doing a mock draft for you guys, like a final pre-NFL draft rookie mock, which will be really fun. We're hoping to have some guests on the show for that one, so little teaser for you guys. So draft week, we'll be changing it up, and there's even so many more prospects we didn't get to, right? So next week, we're going to be talking Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy, because we cannot get to the draft without talking about those guys. But then there's so many more. I mean, Malik Washington, Jalen Polk, Isaiah Davis. Like there's so many guys in this class that I would want to talk about. And we've been going since November, going 2 prospects a week. And we still haven't, there's still guys we haven't got to. But hopefully we've gone really deep for you guys. And whoever we didn't get to in this series on the podcast, I can for sure guarantee you they're going to be in that rookie guide. So make sure and keep your eye out for that rookie guide. We definitely want to set you guys up to know everything you need to know about everybody that you need to know about going into your rookie draft.
For sure. Well, why don't we go ahead and tell the people where you can find you? I'll start with you, Rupert. Where can they find you on Twitter, X / in the Discord?
You can find me at Matthew Rupert FF on Twitter, and then come hop in the Discord, chat with us. For sure.
Cooper, why don't you tell the people if they are listening on Apple Podcasts, where can they find this YouTube page? Where can they find us on Twitter? And you've already plugged everything else. So why don't you go ahead and finish that off for us?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at CouchScoutsFF, and the YouTube is youtube.com/@CouchScouts. So like he alluded to, if you're listening on an Apple Podcast and you want to come see our ugly mugs, consume some video content, you can find us on YouTube. If you're on YouTube, like, sub, leave a comment, helps people find our videos. If you're on Apple, leave a good review. Leave us a 5-star review. That'll help people find the podcast. So we definitely appreciate you guys listening. Appreciate your support. Tell your friends, and love you guys.
You guys can find me on Twitter at DevyMatt. Always love to chop it up with you guys on there, as well as the Discord. But had a good time tonight. We'll be back next week with one more podcast for this Inside the Prospect series, wrapping the series up. So we're excited about that. But until then, we will see you all next time.